Welcome to the first session of Foundations of Effective Teaching 1. I am Karen Hummel. I teach at Valentine Hills Elementary. Gina Foss is the other instructor of this class, and she teaches at Edgewood Middle School. We're both glad that you are joining us for this year's class. We'll be flipping 3 of our sessions and meeting live for 7 sessions. This course is 30 hours of instruction time and 15 hours of you applying in your classroom concepts we discuss in class. During this flip session, you will view a series of video mini lessons, read selected documents, and write reflective responses to the information we share with you. In class, you will be asked to share your thoughts with other participants of the class. We'll use a variety of technology formats to share information with you during this class. All of the information will be in the Google Classroom or in your manual that you'll receive the first night. So you should have already checked your email for the invitation to join the Google Classroom, which is how you're watching this video. And also, you'll have been invited to join Edpuzzle because we'll be using that for posting our videos. We'll use Edpuzzle because we need to verify that all components of the course have been completed, and we'll use this format to know which participants may need more support to complete the video lectures. We've attached some articles and documents in the Google Classroom for today, and we'll ask that you read those documents before you come to class. You'll be getting a printed copy of all of the articles and documents that we shared during the flipped class during the first session that we meet together. It's all in a big binder for you. A big reason that we flip sessions is to provide you with some background information and to allow you time to read articles and information on your own time so that we can optimize our in-class time discussing the concepts, sharing ideas, and making plans for future implementation. So welcome to class. Let's get started. In the Google Classroom, you'll be able to access a copy of articles and slides for each session. I'm going to show you that now. So this is what our page will look like our classroom will look like for Foundations of Effective Teaching. And you'll be able to see assignments here. There's one assignment here already. You just click on that and you'll be able to see the different things that we have for you to do. Go ahead and start and just work your way down through those. We'll try to put them in sequential order of how we want you to complete the activities. You'll notice that the videos are not inserted in this yet because I'm making the videos right now. But you'll be able to click on the links and documents and look at those. And again, you'll get printed copies of those when we meet our first session. Mounds View has several professional development options that you have access to as a Mounds View teacher. Many of these courses are designed by the AFT and our ER&D courses. The American Federation of Teachers and the Educational Research and Dissemination Program is union-sponsored and research-based professional development programs. And what that means is that all of the content and approaches we share are based on level 2 and level 3 research. There are different levels of research around educational practices, and Evelyn Evertson, Edmund Emmer, and Linda Anderson have analyzed educational practices and the research that supports those practices. They created a leveling system to talk about those different levels of research. We're going to examine seminal research, the initial research around educational practices, and the extended works of those researchers and that others have completed. Much work from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s have been replicated and continue to be proven successful and are used during the ER&D courses. As we ask you to read research that's 30 or 40 years old, please read it with an awareness that this is the initial research that continues to be cited and reaffirmed through current research and practices. So level 1 research is theory-based, which means a teacher had a hypothesis and it worked out for them, whatever practice that they used. But the thing is, that research has not been replicated. It's just something someone tried and it worked out for them. It may not have been implemented across a wide range of students or teachers or settings. But when research gets to that level 2 research, that theory has been tested across different people or across different settings. There's been some data and it's been very systematically implemented so that we could determine that there is some truth to the teacher's hypothesis. Now, level 3 research has been peer-reviewed. It's been replicated in an experimental format on a large scale across multiple settings and teachers and students. And there's been a great deal of research around that to prove that it is actually successful. So once again, the things that we'll be sharing with you are at that level 2 and level 3 research level. Let's start our year of study by looking at the Minnesota State Teaching Standards. Those are linked in your Google Classroom. Review the state standards for one of the courses you're going to be teaching, and then look at the teaching standards that are linked to today's assignment in the Google Classroom. The Minnesota teaching standards are at the point that I think they're starting to review, making changes to those, but still today we're using the Charlotte Danielson standards, and you're going to be evaluated on how well you fulfill those Charlotte Danielson skills and how well your students gain skills to prepare them for post-secondary success, similar to how you're going to be evaluating your students on their success in the grade level standards for your courses. So please take note of 2 or 3 similarities between those different standards. Write those down, and we are going to spend some time connecting those dots when we meet live in our class. So pause right now for a few minutes and look at those standards that are in the Google Classroom and the standards for whatever course you're going to be teaching. Those of you who are teaching multiple courses, decide which course you want to look at for this assignment and make some of those comparisons and similarities. And write those down so that you can bring those with you to class. Okay, welcome back. So this is kind of how these flip sessions will go. We'll have you do a little reading, a little reflecting, so that we're not using up time when we're meeting together live and there's a definite time you have to come to class. We want to give you some time to make those choices on your own. So thank you for doing that activity and for making sure you bring it with you to class with you. We're going to switch gears a little bit now, and for the next few minutes I will share with you a little bit about effective group management concepts. You can neither teach nor learn in chaos. Lovie Billups, founder of the ER&D program. So close your eyes. Imagine a classroom full of chaos. What do you see? What do you hear? How do you feel? Are you tense? Is your blood pressure rising? Now pop that thought bubble that's in your mind. Create a new one. Imagine a perfect classroom. Build it in your mind, piece by piece. Now, what do you see? What do you hear? How do you feel? Now open your eyes and think about what you need to do in your role as a classroom teacher to establish that perfect classroom. Hopefully, you're able to think up quite a few things that will be in that perfect classroom. Be ready to throw out your ideas when we meet in class next. Many of the things that you thought of may tie in directly to classroom management, which is what we'll be talking about today. Before we dive into the research, I just want to point out a few definitions for what classroom management is. Our first definition is from 1980 from Evertson, Emmer, and Anderson. And part of it reads, actions teachers take to control misbehavior or maintain order. That definition was revised in 1994 by Evertson and Randolph. It then started to read, actions teachers take to create, implement, and maintain a classroom that supports learning. What changes do you notice in that definition from 1980 to 1984? Hopefully you noticed that it became more proactive in 1994, whereas in 1980 it was a more reactive approach. This is huge. It affects our planning processes and our entire approach to classroom management. Now we have an even more recent definition of classroom management that really shows two distinct purposes. It was revised in 2006. Again, Evertson is the lead researcher and is joined with Weinstein. And that definition now is to establish and sustain an orderly environment so students can engage in meaningful academic learning. And the second purpose, to enhance students' social and emotional growth. As you can see, it's still proactive and now includes establishing an environment to promote other types of growth as well. In looking at these two purposes, we can see how important rules and procedures are in achieving effective classroom management. While talking about classroom management, there are three phases that we need to consider. All are important for classroom management to be effective. Today we're going to be focusing on the planning phase and the implementing phase. So the planning phase is done before the beginning of the school year, before that first day. And then once school starts, you have to implement what you've planned. We're right at that point now where if you're watching this video before school starts, you've been thinking about this already. Or if you're watching it after the first day of school, you're now at the implementing phase. Finally, yet still just as important, you must maintain your management throughout the entire school year, all the way to the last day of school. So let's think about what some of that research is, and this is an opportunity now for you to dive into that research. So there are pages in your manual that you're going to get the first time we meet, pages 3 through 17. These pages are attached to the assignment in the Google Classroom, so you can look at them. And then you'll get the printed version when we get together the first night. But what I'd like you to do is look through those pages and read and see what are some of the research findings around that effective classroom management. We're going to be using this research and these articles in our conversations when we meet our first session. So already you've been able to look at some standards of the courses you're teaching and the standards you're going to be held to as a new teacher in our district, and you've been able to do some looking at research around effective classroom management. Let's look deeper at that classroom management and think about some rules and procedures. We're going to start with routines. So think about a routine that you perform daily. It could be something that you do before school, at your job, after school, or even on the weekend. As you're thinking about those routines, I want you to know some of the definitions of what routines are. So routines are procedures. Procedures in school are things that govern our instructional activities or our housekeeping tasks. Things that you or your students do every day or multiple times a week. There may be 30 or even 60 procedures. Procedures are situation specific. We need to be sure that we present and practice procedures as the need arises. In the first weeks of school, you're going to be teaching a lot of procedures. And just like the procedures that you thought of, you want these procedures that you're going to expect students to use to be ones that they don't really have to think about a whole lot. You just do it because that's the way it's done. But we need to, as teachers, make sure that we show students what our impression or version of a well done procedure is. If you want to see a student do a routine or a procedure, you want to be sure that you've taught it and given the students plenty of practice and given students information on how successfully they have completed that procedure. So in school, procedures kind of fall into two categories. One of those is management procedures. And here's a short list of classroom management procedures. Effective classroom managers establish as many as 30 to 60. Remember, I said that and you read that in the articles. Well thought out procedures and routines and carefully teach them to students. These procedures reflect a teacher's personal organizational preferences. They're necessary to meet the student's personal needs. They are used to perform instructional and housekeeping activities without losing valuable teaching time. In order to have really rich activities, we will have even more routines and procedures in order to have a smooth flow within our day. Procedures will be situation specific and will be designed to build student autonomy and minimize the need for teachers' constant and direct attention. Like, what's your procedure going to be for when do students use the bathroom or go to the drinking fountain or go to their lockers, or how do they move around in class? All of these are things that you're going to want to have thought out and make sure you have a way to teach those to students in your classroom. So just as you need to figure out how students are going to get your attention or respond to questions, you're going to want to think about instructional procedures. So here's a short list of instructional procedures you'll want to teach no matter what grade level you work with. You're going to want to teach these as part of an activity that you do, and remember to repeat that lesson over and over throughout the school year as you find that that routine is kind of getting shaky. So like, how will the day or the period start? How do you want students to enter the classroom? How will materials be distributed and collected? How will students work? Look, where do you want their names on their papers? How do you want those things set up? Teach students how to label those papers, how to hand them in, how to pass things out. If you teach these procedures thoroughly at the beginning of the year, you will cut down on the time it takes for these recurring procedures, and they will be completed more accurately and smoothly throughout the year. What will your procedure be for putting materials away, or how to record when students are absent, or what work they need to make up when they're absent? As we think about these instructional routines, as the teacher, you need to reiterate, practice, and praise students as they use these. Make sure you go back and give booster lessons if you see that a routine is not being followed effectively or efficiently. Give students enough practice and praise so that their accuracy is really high. Researchers have found that consistency in instruction for the first 3 weeks equals well-learned and solidified habits. Attached to the Google Classroom, and part of what you'll be getting in your manual when you come, is a list of some procedures that are referenced on pages 35 to 48 in your manual, and those are attached in the Google Classroom. Look at these lists and think about the grade and the course you're going to be teaching. Go through and look at that list and see if there's things that you have forgotten about. There's not a complete list either. There's probably things that you know you need to do that aren't on this list. So as you look at your grade band list of procedures, notice that for the older students, there's more things that they're going to need to do for accountability, and that will take a longer practice to make sure that those students know about accountability procedures and interactions within their school day. As you look through these lists, mark which procedures you want to teach and practice in the first weeks of school. Make some notes about why those procedures are important and how you want to teach them. And we're going to discuss these during our first session. So thanks so much for your work today, and we'll see you shortly.